All right, and welcome to Now This Is Podcasting. I'm Connor, and I'm here as always with Calvin.
Hello.
And we have Katya with us again.
Hey.
And today we're talking about Hatching. This is a Finnish film that was released recently, and we were pretty excited to see this. We saw this one at the Sea in downtown Denver again. It was us and two other people, as usual. That place must be subsidized by like something, right? Because the tickets are cheap, the beer is cheap, and almost no one goes and sees movies there.
Yeah,
so,
it's all through the Denver Film Festival or like the Denver Film Society. So they take donations, and you can be a member, and you can
help
pay
out.
$5,000 a year and have your name something. You can rent your own theaters and watch your own movies.
They do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, which I mean, we mentioned that in our last review of World's Fair.
There's a whole gaggle of people
Yeah,
there. So many that they forgot to start our movie.
I still forgot about that.
Giggle gaggle.
Well, I thought we were actually going to be able to. Oh my God, there's actually going to be other people in our theater,
And we're going to get a gift bag.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Like, I felt so underdressed that night.
I have like this ratty ass like hoodie I wear everywhere with like holes in it. And I walked in and like people were in suits and I was like, fuck. I looked bad because I thought they were going to our movie and they weren't.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
They have like gender neutral bathrooms, and I heard this one girl, she's like, I am not going to the bathroom with Chris. I see him every day. I don't want to see him pee. I'm going to go into the one with 6 stalls, not 2 stalls. Like, there was a lot going on at that
was
premiere.
like if you haven't been to the theater, I go into the same bathroom that was the men's bathroom before, just because of habit. Like that was where I always knew it.
Yeah, easy left turn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then I
they
came
have
out.
urinals.
Yeah, and then I came out, and there was like a woman, and her wallet was sitting on the sink, and I saw the wallet, and I was like, what? Dude, that is a big phone case. And then I saw it was a woman, and I was like, this is weird. I'm not going to make it a deal, though. I'm just going to wash my hands because I have to obviously wash my hands in front of someone else. And so there were a lot of things going on.
Like if there had been no one there, you would have just snuck out.
Yeah.
It's certainly a changing world. But so Hatching is directed by Hanna Bergholm. Calvin, can you say it correctly? Because you corrected me when I tried to say it.
I mostly did it out of pretentiousness. I mean, I can't say it very well, but there's such a thing as a Finn Swede or a Finnish Swede. A large part of this southwestern part of Finland speaks Swedish as well. And this, to me, looks like a Swedish last name. And when G's come in the middle or at the end, they make a Y sound. So it would be Hanna Bergholm.
Perfect. You can say the director's name from now on.
Just say
I won't
Hanna.
say. I mean, I struggle enough, I think, with
Hanna B.
people thinking that my opinions matter. So,
It was written by Ilya Ratzi, and this was, again, we said it was released pretty recently. It had a budget of $4 million. I thought it actually looks pretty good for a $4 million movie. I thought they pulled off like a lot of like really
wow,
cool stuff.
That's amazing. If it's only $4 million US.
Yeah, that's what yeah.
Probably just for a couple people.
So far, it's
No,
made.
it was in euros.
Really?
I mean, that's what Google is telling
Now
me.
you're making me look dumb.
I'm sorry. I just have to correct how you say everything. It's a lot closer than I thought it was. It's only 1.05 right now. It's basically 4 million.
So I could have just said that.
You could have just said
Wait.
about $4 million.
You asked.
It's like $4 million. No, actually, it's $4 million and $1.
I'm editing that out, and I'm right.
I was about to say it. I mean, at least we can shave some time off of this discussion.
God.
It's such a dickhead.
I mean, the exchange rate used to be a lot higher.
It did. It was like $1.3 for a euro.
Yeah, this changing world. It's euros. It's bathrooms. I can't keep up.
Okay, so far it's made 400,000 euros.
So not that much.
I have to look it up now. So sorry. It's okay. This is all easily
Just say
editable.
units. Just say units.
The economy of units.
Yeah, then people can just be like, which unit? And then they can figure it out themselves.
Okay, that was 430,000 US dollars. Okay, so I did have the correct information for that.
It's USD.
Yeah, USD.
SD.
But so far, this has made 400,000 in the box office, and it's cool that we got to be a part of that because I always want to support kind of the smaller films, and especially like going to the Sea. So it was pretty good to go to. I liked every once in a while to grab an IMDb review to start these episodes off. And I have a kind of a spicy one that I think describes the movie for me for sure, and maybe Calvin, but Katya is going to be the one full of controversy on this episode.
Travers.
The possible voice of reason.
Yes.
No, never mind.
So the review is titled Imminently Okay, which I laughed so hard at. I was like, God damn, I wish I had come up with that. They go on to say, if this was in English, the rating would be half of what it is. It's just okay. It's there, it moves, and then it's over. You can read deeper into the meanings if you want. People have told me things about my scripts that I don't think are there. It's nicely made and acted, but eventually it's just a big so what, which to me is almost exactly how I feel about this movie, because I went into this thinking really highly of like every international film and like non-English film we had watched. We've watched like some really good ones like Lamb and The Worst Person in the World, Drive My Car, which I eventually came around on, even though like I initially didn't like it. It was an excellent movie. So I went into this like Finnish horror, like this is going to be high-minded. It's going to explore like all these different routes. It's going to have like maybe a commentary on a social issue, or it's going to like dive deep into some, dealing with the shadow self or something like that. And I ultimately walked away with this is Finnish Blumhouse. Like this movie is like, it's crappy horror is kind of how I ended up walking away from
I
this.
wouldn't call it crappy horror. I think just overall.
Maybe generic horror would be a better way to put it.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say that overall, like, the genre of horror is crappy. It's just generally simplistic for where these things come from. Like all of these deep psychological issues that we work through in media expression are generally just trying to scare people now. Like we're not really concerned with why any of this scares us anymore, which is what makes them so boring.
Well, and I think there's a difference between horror and crappy horror. Like I think Blumhouse is crappy horror, but we've talked about like Hereditary and The Witch, and even Midsummer is really a horror movie.
I mean, I've heard
Has
a
the
lot
feeling
of people
of a horror movie.
Yeah,
but
I've heard a lot of people were uncomfortable by some parts of that movie.
What?
I liked this better than Hereditary.
Wow.
So,
That's why
I'm
I
just
said
gonna
you were
say that.
you were going to be the controversial one because
her head fell off and there was no blood, and it was like, what
There was
happened?
actually a lot of blood. Okay, you need to go.
I'll watch it
listen to
again.
our-
but I thought
our
it was
review on it.
stupid. I thought that whole movie was like, this doesn't make sense.
Oh my
now
God.
there's a demon. What the? What
Did
the
we
hell
even
is
watch
going
the
on?
same movie?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
God.
we did. It was like, girl, blah blah blah, fire. The end.
You
described Ari Aster's masterpiece perfectly.
Yeah, that's what I got out of that movie.
Don't worry, we have a 2-part episode that you can, or a 2-part series you can listen to.
Yeah, I'll listen to it. So this one, I didn't think this one was crappy. I thought it was like, I don't think it would have. I thought it was going to be a lot more scary than it was. But also thinking about this little girl, which we'll get into, but it was so scary. What's the situation she was in and where that the hatching hatched from. That was really scary. Like equally as scary as like in the World's Fair where Casey's obsession like hatched, like where that came from. I thought it was very creepy.
Okay. No, and I think there's a difference between me having a poor opinion of it as a good horror movie. It certainly is creepy. It captures like atmosphere really well. I think at least for the first half, it does a really good job of that. But Calvin, what is your first impression of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that guy on IMDb.
I should have found the username and given him credit because that's a great.
Give a shout out. Yeah, I think that's what I felt so strange. It's like I was on the edge of my seat. Like, where is this gonna go? What territory are we gonna explore? Are we gonna get into like social media? Are we gonna get into shadow self? Are we gonna get into and then it was just like, oh no, the creature's just real. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what you're trying to say then.
Yeah.
It's very, I think that you needed to make some things a little bit more representative to drive home those points. Because otherwise they dangle as loose ends, as routes like unexplored, choose your own adventures. Those are routes that were unexplored by this movie and they could have gone that direction, but you just need another, I guess you gotta have to do another playthrough.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. It certainly, going through the movie, I felt like, oh, like what an interesting topic you've brought up. Like, I am excited to see how you explore this more. And then 20 minutes goes by and it's like, oh, another interesting topic. Are you going to explore this one more? And then another 20 minutes goes by, and this is only an hour and 26 minutes. So you only have so many segments of things to talk
There
about.
are so many theses you can bring up before finally like the movie ends.
Well, and then the thing that troubled me about this one is that it never latched onto a single idea to drive home the end. Mm-hmm. The end just is, I really like that. It's like, it's there, it moves, and then it's over. Because it never felt like it captured one topic to be about. It sort of teased a lot of topics. But with that, Katya, what's your first impression of this?
So I can commiserate or understand the idea of not necessarily latching onto one thing, but I think this is where my viewing of something as a simple story really helps me, because I see a movie as, oh, there's Tina, there's the main character, that it's about her. I was looking for other things which kept me engaged, but I also thought, this is about Tina. This is about what's happening to her, and that's all really scary. So I thought it was pretty. I thought the layout of the movie, like all of the house and the way it was visually presented, was beautiful. I thought it was very engaging. I thought the monster was amazing as a monster.
Yeah, you have more information on it later, which I'm fascinated by, because the creature design in this movie is outstanding.
Well, yeah, which you guys like too. Is like, that was a cool monster.
That's certainly a cool creature. One of the high points is the creature design is like, it's one of my favorite parts of the film.
Yeah. So initially, I thought it was very captivating. I stayed engaged the whole time. So I'm a fan.
No, and I like that. It's these conversations get better if we have like differing opinions on them. So I'm always excited to hear more about like why I might be wrong, or to prove someone else wrong. And so it always makes
that feels like like why we do this podcast,
right?
But the problem is you can't prove me wrong. Just kidding.
You're just Katya's always right. I forgot that was rule number one. That was when you joined us. That was in your contract.
It's the rule just for this episode.
So before we move further on into our ideas on this, I just kind of want to give a kind of a brief overview of the film. It starts out like pretty beautiful Finnish family. Their home gets wrecked by a crow, and then the crow is killed by the mother of the household, and the daughter Tina that you mentioned earlier, Katya, she goes, finds the bird, finds its egg, and cares for it. It ends up growing very large, I assume through her love. And it hatches this creature, the aforementioned great designed creature. And it goes about kind of carrying out like these really violent acts. And the movie kind of, I feel like, teases, like, is this a real creature? Is it Tina? What is like the motivation of this creature moving forward? And it all kind of culminates in this like this big climax at the end with stabbing and like a pretty tragic end to a character we've come attached to.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's going to be kind of a good story, like it feels like it's got all the bones of a really good story there. And I just kind of want to dive deeper into what things worked in this and what things didn't. One of the things that worked for me was the aesthetic. I thought it, especially in the first half, carried out like creepy horror movie really well. It was really kind of minimalist in the way it used the creature initially, and then it kind of just goes all out with the creature, which I loved. There wasn't like that anticipation, like just little shots of it like through a doorway or anything like that. I kind of like that they just threw this thing out there like pretty immediately. You got to see like what is a great creature design. Katya, can you elaborate more on like what went into it? Because I just think that's so important to what I think is one of the better aspects of the movie.
Yeah, the creature. Bum, bum. The creature. So I listened to an interview with the director, and she was like, yeah, I just Googled the best animatronics like person, and then she reached out to them, and it's the same guy. Oh, it's Gustav Hogan or something.
Don't look at me, I can't see.
Yeah, Hoegn. But he.
I like that you were so critical of pronunciation that every time someone says something, they peer at you real quick
like,
to make sure it's right.
Do you know this person I'm talking about? But he did he worked with The Dark Knight and with Lucasfilm on multiple Star Wars, and he did Game of Thrones stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, if anything that was consistent with Game of Thrones was certainly
was
everything other
the
than the
monsters
story.
and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it started out as a puppet, which was so cool. And like the director really liked like E.T. and that kind of stuff growing up. She didn't really like scary movies, which made her so interested in them. But so it was very much a puppet that slowly, transformed into, more than a puppet as it went on. But that's how it started, which was really cool.
I love
like
kind of
five people or whatever, which is crazy to think about planning it.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
yeah. I love this scene where you kind of get the first full view of it. Mm-hmm. It's crawling in through the window. And I remember like when we left the movie, I walked out, I was like, that's got to be puppeteered. I mean, it just had like kind of that marionette feel to it, but it was just so well done. And it was so convincing in its look that I wasn't like, this is hokey or lame. It was a totally like terrifying creature. And I think anytime you anthropomorphize an animal by putting human teeth in its mouth, it makes it 100 times more scary.
Yeah.
It's that the creature was terrifying. I thought it was really well done. And that's great. I usually like to do the research on the fun facts like that. You've been crushing it this last couple of weeks. So
hashtag crushed it.
Yeah, that was great. I love learning about that kind of stuff. All the behind the scenes stuff is fascinating to me. But yeah, as far as the creature design goes and then kind of how it plays into the story, like how'd you feel about that, Calvin? Like did the tone and atmosphere of this movie work for you, even though other things didn't?
I think what's so fascinating about what you say when you say like a typical horror movie wants to keep the creature until the end, right? That's the whole point of horror is about what we conjure in our own minds. It's never about what we actually see. So when you put something into the story like that, it becomes a different type of horror. It's this very gruesome, gross. It's not concerned about what our necessarily about our anxiety of what is to come. I think that's the big that's the major form of horror in American film. But this body horror, which I'm getting more and more familiar with, we're also going to do. We've teased it a couple times. We're going to do a series on Julia Ducournau, which is she does Titan and Raw, and
yeah.
I don't. Have you watched those yet?
I've heard Raw described as a cannibalistic coming of age story. So if that gives you any hint to what the movie is about, like, it's yes.
Exactly. And that one's fairly tame compared to Titan. I cannot wait for you to see Titan because I can't. So body horror is something that I'm becoming a little bit more exposed to lately, and I think this is what's so interesting is because they wanted to make this thing gruesome and gross. And when you say an expression, it grew because of her love, I think that's so interesting because I think when out of all of its actions, it's the shadow self of Tina. It's all of the things that she can't express. It's all this anxiety and anger. And the creature is what acts on it, not her. And I think that's why it's what this movie is so interesting. It's like, here's the monster. It exists, very creepy. You have to deal with this ugly, gross part of yourself, and this is the way it acts.
Yeah.
So overall, like I think that's a really cool and interesting way because we're not putting it off, and it's not this thing that hangs out in the shadows. It's something that she's having to confront, that she's aware exists, but nobody else is. Which I just don't feel like they continued that conceit all the way through the end. I think it was there. They just didn't make it the major focus and didn't explore it enough, as much as I would have hoped.
Yeah, the creature was definitely a good representation of everything dark in Tina, and yeah, I agree. I don't think it grew. I think it was growing because she was nurturing it in a way, but she was nurturing it with all of these like negative feelings,
like through her suppression.
Yeah, like she found the egg after she repeatedly rammed this crow's head in.
Oh my God!
10, 20 times.
It's like shrieking is like still I hear it. It's actually it makes me kind of want to get into the sound design more of this movie because the shrieking of the crow is great. Yeah. There's not a ton of score to this. There's also not a lot of jump scares to this, so you don't have like those big spikes.
Yeah.
In sound or anything like that. But there's a lot of like creepy clicking and slurping and
creepy clicking, creepy like merging of breathing, and this creature is everything that she doesn't want to show, and like she can't show because they have this perfect, social media life. Like it's very much like, I don't know. I think the reason I like this so much is I think it's about Tina and this like hyper narcissist mom, and like Tina's not safe and she can't control anything. She the most control she has, and that you see her nurturing this creature to life, but she still doesn't have control over it. She doesn't have control over anything. So I think the creatures, like, it's really important that you can see it, you can feel it, you're watching it transform, because like everything she's experiencing, all of her trauma from this mom and this life, like it is affecting everything.
Yeah.
It's not just something that exists behind the scenes. I mean, it does exist behind the scenes, but everything it does is very, very important. So that's why, like, I think it's both like important and unimportant that it's separate from Tina, like that they do things together but also separately. Like I think that's very I don't think it breaks anything for me.
No, that makes sense. And I kind of want to get into more ideas of like what this movie is about. Like you've kind of touched on them already, like this perfect life, this social media life. The mother is a vlogger, and the movie kind of opens up with her being like, this is our perfect Finnish family. And the opening scene is, like I mentioned kind of in the synopsis, is this crow comes in and is just wrecking this like perfectly staged home they have. And I think it sets the movie up really well to be a commentary on how we live through our phones, how we only put like our best image forward, how we are inauthentic all the time, or I mean, not we, but like how people are inauthentic. And my thought was like, okay, now you've got this creature growing. It's born from this, its own crow mother being killed. And so it's going to be the force that starts to dismantle kind of the true evil in this movie, which is the facade, the fakeness, the inauthenticity. And it feels like the first 3 minutes of this movie set that up so well. And then it never pursues that. It never becomes about making the family realize that they're not real and that they need to maybe come together and they need to have a real experience. Like Tina has no real relationships.
Well, yeah, because I think it's about her mom. It's all about Tina and her mom. It doesn't, the other people in the whole movie don't matter. I don't think. Like I think they're just props.
Yeah, I think so too. They really just drive plot points. I think what he's saying is what would have been an interesting idea is like she clearly cares about this creature, right? She's bathing it. If it would be a force for good, that's almost like and that's what subverts the expectations of the household and the collective persona that they've created. That would have been a really interesting and different type of horror story, because that's another reason that you would show the monster, is because you would humanize it and make it seem like, oh, this isn't so bad. It's very, very ugly. It's very something gruesome that we think initially, and we would have concern about its intent. But then it kind of dispels that really quickly.
Yeah, but so I don't think it's about them creating this narrative. I think it's about the mother creating this narrative about her family, and we never see what she's posting. We don't even know if she has followers. We don't know what she's doing. We just see her controlling every single person in her life. And we see Tina as someone the mother has nurtured to be a part of this perfect life. And now Tina is not performing correctly. And now Tina has this creepy monster.
And so
nothing this monster does, like nothing Tina does, can be good to her mom. Doesn't matter what Tina does. It can't be good. No matter if Tina has her hair brushed and she's pretty and she like does her training. It doesn't matter, because say she wins the competition, like her mom's going to have something else for her to do. So I think like that's where I think it moves away from, I think the social media thing sets the stage for like who they all are in this narrative, and it makes it confusing because you think it needs to be about that.
Because they keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. It's actually the relationship between Tina and the bird creature is actually a reflection of her mother and Tina's relationship. And I think you and I, Connor, are reading it so much into the psychological aspect of just herself, but it's really just an allegory.
I just had the thought that
it's just trauma.
Is that the creature is maybe just how Tina views that's what she thinks her mother views her as, is just this ugly thing that can't do anything
Yeah.
right.
100%.
And I just had that like epiphany now, like after you've been kind of elaborating on why this movie is better than it actually is, Katya. I'm maybe realizing this movie is still better than it actually is.
Yeah.
I still think it just...
It doesn't lead you to that.
it
though,
never, like,
without-
It teases
yeah.
too many other things. But I will say, I think it might be time to get off the Jung train.
Yeah.
And this is where we deplatform. I think that still exists, but we read too much into just the shadow self when really this is about bad mothers and it's about a mother archetype. And we just saw the bird as a shadow self.
Yeah.
It's about bad mothers. It's about like narcissistic type
Yep.
parents, and so it doesn't have to be a mom. It can be a dad. And like I think like the dad in this situation is just a pawn or just like a prop that the mom has like subdued.
He's terrible. He's absolutely absent.
He's the worst.
Yeah.
And that like underscores it.
I think one of the probably more important scenes that is probably going to be really understated in this film, and maybe you won't like latch onto, but Tina goes to talk to her dad after finding out that her mother's been having an affair. And it feels like she wants to confront him on this and like let him know. And he's like, he just so absent. He cares more about his guitar. He's like, okay, like conversation done now.
Yeah.
And she leaves. And so I think like everyone in this movie is pretty terrible. Like we said, that the mother's having an affair, absent father, the brother who is just the kid from A Christmas Story,
Yeah.
reborn as the devil, like the worst little brother ever.
It's just he can only speak Finnish.
He's terrible.
But like he's gonna turn into the mom. I think he's like the mom's prototype, actually.
Yeah,
Like
no,
I think he's a
could see that.
narcissist.
The only like character that I think you can latch onto and like feel good about is actually the mother's
Lover.
yeah
Taro.
yeah, he's great. He's actually
Yeah.
like amazing in this, but which is kind of
At the same time, makes you question whether he even is good, because why is he having an affair with a married woman?
that's
Finland.
again, that's what I'm saying is this. That's kind of my point about this movie, is it feels like it's just doing so many things, but it's never picking one thing to be about. Mm-hmm. Because like
We give too much screen time to too many characters.
yeah, and if you want to make it about the mother has found a lover who is better for her because it's like the father is abusive or neglectful or it just isn't a good person, but he seems like still a good guy. And it also, I mean, there's a scene where he's like genuinely hurt by his wife cheating. They're having breakfast at the table and he's like, your mother is very strong-willed and it's kind of just easier to let her do what she's going to do. So he's accepted the affair. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, he's kind of bad in his own way because it feels like he's kind of passive to his children.
Yeah.
But I mean, this whole story still affects him too, and his wife's actions affect him too. I still think like kind of the worst character in this is the mother, but it's tough because I just have a hard time figuring out like what was this movie trying to be, and that's why I made the point. I just think it's kind of dumb horror because it never picked anything to be about. So all I can choose is for it to just be scary creature living in house.
Yeah, but like the scary creature living in the house is like, I think it's always been there before the scary creature was living in the house. Mm-hmm. So that's where I like keep coming back to and seeing it. So it's hard because it is, I think without those scenes of it being a separate thing, it'd make that more accessible. You know, like without like the scenes like, oh, it is a separate thing from Tina. Because
Right.
for a while you're not like totally sure if it's separate from her or not. So you don't know.
You know, really, I think we just Taro needs to be cut. I don't think he really creates anything that wasn't already there in terms of narrative direction or in terms of theme. He just kind of provides a nice fatherly figure, but it's just it's confusing with all of his other actions and in contrast with everything else that we see.
But if you like think about it in the terms of the mom being like this total like terrorist of her family and controlling person of her family, it's like, okay, she's got the dad, check, like he's conquered or whatever. Now I've got this new handyman boyfriend, like he's great. I'm gonna be able to like remake my life with him. He's got a baby, like I can make him the baby a better Tina. And now like Tina's my girlfriend. I'll tell her like, oh, like sex with Taro is great. Which
Oh my
is
God, how
so
terrible was that?
Inappropriate.
I
Yeah.
was completely caught off guard by that scene. Like, oh, and don't tell anyone. Like, this is our little secret. Like,
That's the whole
discussing
thing.
her sex life. I was like, this is crazy.
Because what's Tina, all she wants is to connect, right? Tina's not going to like say anything. Like the only time she tries to stand up for herself, I think, is going to her dad because that's the only other option. And he's like, yeah, I can't help you. So she's totally helpless except to play into her mom's like game, which her mom's game involves going to Taro's creepy house, like to help her with her stress / have sex with her boyfriend, which is so weird.
Yeah. So part of the whole movie, which the reason I kept trying to figure out what is this about, because I thought a lot of the film was subverting expectations. Like we talked about earlier, they show the monster like right away. And I was like, okay, well then this isn't really a monster. It's going to be like a helper or some kind of important character to Tina. And then to go to what looks like a haunted house, but it has a kind, loving man in it who is like really nice to Tina. You got a baby in it. So the haunted house, like the aesthetic of it, is actually like the nicest place she's been in the whole setting of this film. And the real haunted house is this beautiful staged home she's been in. And so part of my trouble with trying to figure out what the movie was really going on about is because it felt like it was constantly subverting expectations. It was constantly not about what I thought like a traditional, maybe like American horror Blumhouse movie would be about. And that's why I was kind of confused. Do we want to get into like the ending of this film? The story ends where, what is it? Ali is the name of the...
Ali, this creepy lullaby song. Ali, the monster.
And that's what this bird creature has turned into, basically a doppelganger of Tina. Mm-hmm. And she's in the house. The mother and Tina know about it. They warn the husband and son about it, and they're going to go and kill this creature. And like I said, it kind of undoes the idea of like the shadow self in this movie, because the creature's real. And then the mother goes to stab the doppelganger, and Tina jumps in the way, and she's killed. And then the creature drinks the blood of Tina and becomes the new Tina.
Yeah, but the creature drinks it on accident.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was like, to me, it looked like it opened its mouth. It was trying to...
yeah, it did. But she was like, I don't know. I don't think it was so much like, it didn't feel like the creature drank it. It felt like, oh, this is what has to happen because neither one of them like can die, basically. They both have to live because both of these things are real and both of these things exist.
And they're connected.
So if you kill one, it's going to kill the other, or they both have to live together. So
So what I was going to say is it's also a visual conceit of continuing the motif of vomit and how she is feeding it.
Did I say this movie had...
There's so many fluids.
This movie had 66% more vomit.
200% more vomit than you thought it would.
Right. Okay. Because the trailer has one scene where she's eating seeds and pukes it up to feed to the bird.
Off camera, at least. Like, you understand what's going on.
Yes. But then there's a scene where the head or a headless dog is dropped in her bed and she pukes. The bird then eats it. And I was just, I don't usually gag or feel gross at movies, but I was like, there are too many fluids in this scene right now. And it's pretty continuous. And I was kind of taken aback by it. I was like, I was not expecting it.
Her face was covered with the drool.
Oh, yes,
slobber
the drool.
And then she looks over and her bed's covered in blood from the headless dog. And then she vomits and the bird is like, oh, good dinner. And yeah, that's a lot to take in.
And the sound design is great for the lapping of puke. I totally believed it. It was all disgusting.
See, like all of this, like the creature bringing her food, like wanting her to regurgitate it, and like tubby time and all this stuff that happens with the creature, it just like reinforces the idea this is all about the mom and the girl, and like the mom's like notes on her weight, like the whole thing with the throwing up. It's like, oh, she's just throwing up seeds, but like she's throwing up everything when she throws up for the bird. She's not just throwing up her seeds. So like if you think about her she's throwing up constantly. Like she is developing bulimia. And like there's kind of like, you're like, oh, it's just like hinting at it. It's actually for the creature, but it's actually for the creature and it's actually happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's really both things.
It's both things all at once.
It's a very smart way of doing it because it works in just a pure narrative sense, but it also indicates the type of eating disorder that someone in gymnastics would do, especially
certainly, yeah.
And especially with a narcissistic mother who's always like, oh, you look like you've lost some of your baby fat finally.
Oh, that was such a...
It's like you're already
that
40 pounds.
Line made me feel so bad.
Yeah, and she's over there like swooning over another baby, like, oh.
Yeah.
No, I certainly think you've changed my mind a bit on it. I feel like the idea of the shadow self functions more normally in a film if it's has a more psychological take. The fact that this is a very literal take on two beings that are essentially the same person operating the world together is what threw me off.
But if you think about like trauma or something like to that effect as like a thing that affects
physical
as
expression.
a physical expression of it, it's like they are two different things interacting all the time. Like it's something that's there doing its own separate thing to its own separate people. And like that might be kind of a leap because it's not what I felt like when I was watching the movie. I was also just equally kind of like confused when I was watching it. But then when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, there was all these there was just so much between the mom and the daughter. It has to be about that. So I don't know. That's where I ended up.
Well, and I think the idea of Tina is like Ali is like her unleashing like that side of herself because she's putting the pillow over her ears because she's tired of the dog yapping, and then the dog turns up dead. And so it's like this is her like. I guess throughout the movie I was like I thought maybe this is what she would secretly want to do, like a negative feeling she would have that she would never carry out, but this bird is like willing to do it for her, or she has a competitor in her gymnastics gym who might take her spot. So the bird goes and attacks the girl. That way she's not in the picture anymore. That way she can have the spot at the meet.
But then like sorry to interrupt.
No.
The most interesting part is like when she decides to hurt herself and fail at the meet to save the baby. Because it's like, is she saving the baby because it's a baby? Or is she saving the baby for her mom and she's decided that this baby is more important to her mom than her competition? Her competition is to her mom. So like, has she decided, okay, I'm not going to be able to be perfect, but this baby could be perfect. And that's why I'm going to hurt myself. Like, I don't think she thought into it that much, but like that part was really important because if she's trying so hard to please her mom, it's such a, like, what would you do? Would you win the competition or would you save the baby? Like, which is more important to your mother?
It's
kind of
interesting.
thing.
I really thought of it as, you know, I can see what you're saying as far as the Ali doing all of these things because it misunderstands exactly what Tina wants in the same sort of way that Tina isn't doing exactly what her mom wants, but something like it to the effect. The problem that I have is it seems to be that that Ali doesn't need to see what Tina wants. It's like she understands what Tina wants and knows what Tina is thinking. That's why I got so hung up on the shadow self expression rather than the more literal interpretation of it being an allegory between or a manifestation of her relationship with her mother. So that's what I find ultimately a little bit confusing. I think they could have made it a little less representative in that terms. Like it would have had to be a little bit more like she said something about it or indicated that she wanted to do this thing but held back. I don't know about the baby though. That's interesting. Like I saw it more as just a protection of life. Like she doesn't want to hurt her friend. She doesn't want to hurt this baby because she's ultimately a good person.
Yeah, but she's ultimately not as good as that baby.
I think it's because it's taboo to show a dead baby in a movie.
Yeah, I was like, man, this movie's going to be wild if they kill that baby.
But yeah, no, I think you've brought up good points. I still think it kind of falls into the column of I'm reading more into the script and the story than is actually there because I just don't think they quite conveyed any single point well enough for me to land on it being this was what the movie was about. I think it kind of just jumped around too much and left too many threads loose at the end. But I certainly think you've made me come around. I'll rate it a bit higher, which is why I enjoy these conversations. I feel bad because it feels like Calvin and I have been ganging up on you this episode.
Ganging up on me. The whole point of the end is just like, all right, crap. I can't just solve this problem. Now I have to deal with what I've created in my daughter, which is this weird hybrid creature thing.
Yeah, I actually
like,
think that the ending is
super
better.
Traumatized and like, what's it gonna do? I don't know now. Like,
yeah, it's like pure trauma with like all of Tina's memories. I think
Yeah.
that's even more. It's actually a better ending than I originally came away from, because I just didn't understand necessarily all of those things. I just thought of it as shadow self, and now you just have this shadow self that seems to be merged together. But in the framework of Jung's psychology, it doesn't work. It's not a very good analogy. But in yours, it makes so much more sense. Like, here's your real problem that you've created, and it is much worse than it was in the first place.
It's like you have to confront this trauma now, because that's all that exists now.
Yeah.
All that you have in front of you is not the daughter you thought you had. It's all the, like you said, the problem you've created for yourself.
Yeah, because you killed your real daughter. I mean, that's even it's a much more elegant metaphor than we really thought, because it's very brutal. It seems like on the nose metaphor, like, oh, you killed your daughter, but it's a little bit better than
It's like,
I think
you
we
killed
thought.
your daughter and created this. Like, you could have had a happy kid.
Yeah,
You could have had a perfect life.
yeah. Instead, you have a jawless crow.
Your jaw's crow that like wasn't a crow, because crows don't lay eggs on the ground, so it's definitely not a crow egg.
I mean, that's the other part of, like, I thought, like, okay, that was probably a dream, and that's why this is all a representation in shadow self. And then all of a sudden it's real, like, oh my gosh, this is my working theory is going well.
Well, but I think the movie set it up for that too. Like, the bird got its neck snapped, and then it's out of the trash can now, and she finds it in the woods. Like, there was a lot of stuff that made me feel like this was all nefarious spirit or something, and not
More supernatural.
yeah, and not personification of the daughter's, like, a side that she hasn't allowed to be shown yet, or something that's been, like, unleashed out of her. I just feel like that it just needed to tone down ideas that maybe had commentaries on other issues, and I just think the movie needed to focus more on one thing. And then I think everything Katya is saying, like, really gets brought to the forefront, and then you actually genuinely have a movie that is much more high-minded than what we got shown.
Yeah.
Because I think all the notes are there. They just haven't been composed correctly to, like, give me the right story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's too many odds and ends and too many doors for this place to go on the hallway to the main narrative, that you get kind of confused. Like, well, wait a minute, I guess I missed a few pieces in there. Because did that matter? I guess I missed that.
Right. I think we're getting ready to wrap this one up. On a scale of 1 to 10, how many bird seeds would you chew up and vomit for this movie?
Oh man, that makes it. Is that a good thing?
It's up to you to decide.
I would raise that creature like my own. It's Tina Hatchstead. It's important. I give it an 8.5 bird seeds.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think that I certainly overestimated this and then underestimated it. I don't know how that works.
No, I'm right there with you. Yeah. No, I feel the same way.
I still err on the this movie didn't meet my expectations because I just misinterpreted some things. And I think part of it is because it wasn't very tight and concise. But it's still very good. It's a lot. I was saying I'm ready to have my mind changed, and I definitely Katya, you really changed my mind on this one. It was much better than I thought.
We were dogging on you at the beginning, and now, yeah.
I didn't even talk about the wallpaper. Or did I talk about the wallpaper?
No, you didn't talk
No,
about
it's
the
great
wallpaper.
wallpaper.
What
No,
wallpaper?
there's
Beautiful
not-
home.
All of it. All the wallpaper.
What is the wallpaper?
So this is also why I think it's about the wallpaper in the house. It's all florally and beautiful. And then the rooms that the mom designed in Taro's house, including the nursery, have very similar wallpaper. So it's like another example of the mom, like, kind of
Infecting different areas.
spreading, herself. But also it's so cool. Like, I'm like, yes, design my house. But
Right.
don't marry me.
But it's a good movie. It's a solid movie. It's better than I thought. But it's going to be a 7.1 for me.
No, I think that's about where I'd land too. We didn't even mention, I think one of the shots I really loved is the creatures, like, creeping along the floor. And you only see it in the reflection of, like, the dresser that she has.
And you kind of see a little bit of underneath the bed. Because
Yeah.
you can see through
Very creepy, very well done.
Yeah.
And it really, that's why I think, like, all the very good atmosphere came from the beginning.
Yeah.
Once it changes from the creature into Ali, I sort of lost like kind of the horror element of this movie because now it's just like
Slightly different.
yeah,
A different type of movie.
You've kind of changed your movie fundamentally at that point. But I thought that there was super great sound design and there was really good tense scenes, and I love that there's only maybe like one jump scare in this movie.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like the idea of Finnish horror where they maybe don't have the same propensity for violence and gore the same way an American audience does, because there really isn't gore or anything in this. All the attacks, you kind of just see the aftermath of it.
Yeah, but this made you uncomfortable rather than an eye roll. This is more than
Yeah.
most horror movies that we've seen.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, because every like gross thing is also very tender. It's like, oh, there's a lot of vomit, but it's because the creature wants to connect.
It is so
like she's gonna take care of it.
amazing that
Yeah.
you're actually right about that. That eating vomit is actually a tender moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I
connective.
thought so too. Like
Yeah.
when the one in the trailer for sure, because it's also off camera. The other ones are a little bit more overt.
Right.
And then yeah, especially when she's lapping it up, like after she's changed into looking like Tina, and she's just like scarfing it down out of that fruit.
Oh
bowl.
my god, it looked like a bowl of fruit roll-ups. I thought
Yeah.
it's terrible. But this movie certainly doesn't sink to the level of like a Wish Upon.
I mean, there
It's
are
certainly not.
few-
It's certainly not at what I think is a viewable level the way Wish Upon is.
Yeah, because there would have been a line where Tina would have been like, "Oh, Ollie's such a slut for birdseed."
Oh my god, yeah.
Wait, like that Wish Upon with the poster on your wall?
Yeah,
Yes.
that one. There's a line where the girl's trying to get something translated in Chinese, and this dude's like, "Oh yeah, we could ask my cousin," and she's like, "Oh, how much would it cost?" Like, "Oh, she's a slut for wontons. Don't even worry."
So they just buy her a box of wontons.
Yeah,
It's
she's
terrible.
like, "Oh, she's like, cool, okay, yeah, I can get wontons, no big deal." And like that's like, there's like another line where one of the girls describes the main girl's dad. She's like, "Your dad is hot, like sriracha hot."
they call him hot sauce.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So it just feels like someone who's like 55, like trying to write snappy teen dialogue
Fucking awful.
and getting like it's the uncanny valley of dialogue for someone that doesn't understand how
Uncanny
teens
valley.
talk. Yeah.
Well, it's like you hear it and you're like, wait,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, what just happened?
So this movie, while it didn't reach the level of high-mindedness I expected it to, it certainly is much better than, I guess, maybe a like I said, like a Blumhouse movie. It still, I will still have my knocks for it because despite your really great argument for why this is a good movie, Katya, I just don't think it like reached that for me. So I'm still gonna keep it like a 6. It's fine. But it just like it needs to pick a thing to be about, and it never felt like it latched on to any one of them very well. All right, and with that, we're gonna wrap this one up. I just want to thank Calvin for being on as always,
I'm always here.
and thank you, Katya, for being on. You genuinely did change my mind about this. I was like putting this at like 3 or 4.
Oh,
I was like, this is like real lame garbage. This is stupid horror, and I didn't get a lot out of it. But you certainly changed my mind on how I needed to view this differently, because I certainly had my own idea about like the shadow self, and this is all Calvin's fault because he's totally changed me on how
yeah. It's
I think about that.
2022, Calvin.
I know. I'm just
Jungian psychology is out. Katya's psychology is in.
I'm just so hung up on my misogynistic archetypes.
Yeah. A lady can be a narcissist.
Oh, totally.
But you certainly changed my idea on it, and I that's why I always appreciate these conversations. So thanks for that. But yeah, with that
Thank you.
with that we're
Yeah. And and speaking of like how good you were at convincing, like he ended up putting Drive My Car at a 5. And He was
Oh.
at a 3. So only a +2 points. Here you're at I guess a 2.5 if we're doing 3 or 4, because Connor likes to
No,
do
I'm
those.
a +3.
Yeah, so up to a 3. So
Yeah.
you're more persuasive than me.
Yeah.
But also, I was also talking about Drive My Car, which is infinitely more unenjoyable.
yes.
All right. Thank you, Calvin. Thank
Just-
you, everybody listening. Please remember that when you see me on the streets. I have brown hair. So please compliment me.
But yeah, with that, we'll wrap this one up. Yeah, thanks again, Calvin. Thanks, Katya. You can find our podcast on any platform like Spotify or Apple Music. We also upload all these to YouTube. So go ahead and leave a comment. Tell us what we're doing well. Tell us what we're doing wrong. If you have any suggestions on films we can do in the future, go ahead and let us know. And with that, thank you for listening to Now This Is Podcasting.